Today is our final, sadly, the final segment of our Women as Legacy Builders. We have saved Chantal for this evening. Just as a recap, we started off with Dr. Nadine Collins. We spoke about living in your purpose. Then we had Fungai Ndimera. We spoke about building your financial legacy. Then we moved on to Modesta. We spoke about growing your career as a woman. And then we had Dolly last week, who spoke about taking up your space as a South African corporate woman. And this afternoon, we have Chantal, Chantal de Kock, who's going to take us through how she builds other women and how she's also been built by other women in her amazing journey in her career and also building her own business. So welcome, Chantal.
Thank you so much, Elona, for having me. It's such a privilege. I think, just listening to all of the other ladies that you have been sharing this journey with, just a fantastic roundup of all of the important components that so many women need to know about. And thank you for saving me for last.
Last but not least. So sometimes when we've been empowered, we forget that there's something else we could do, even if we feel, oh, I haven't arrived and so on. So just before we start, I'd like you to maybe introduce yourself and your business and what you're focusing on now.
Thank you so much. So as you know, I am Chantal de Kock. I currently work with an organization called Fatola. We build businesses that last in one line. I have the privilege of working with entrepreneurs across the country, helping them to grow their businesses. And that's a very fulfilling experience and a privilege. And that's pretty much what I do in my day job. When I'm not doing my 9 to 5, I work with a group of amazing women at an organization called Cape Town Naturally. And that's a company that I co-founded about five years ago, I think.
5 years already.
It's 5 years already,
wow.
And it's grown and taken on, a whole nother shape and form that I don't think we initially planned for. But at Cape Town, actually, the focus is really on empowering women through self-love and, acceptance of self and authenticity. And one of the mediums that we encourage them to do that through is through wearing their hair in their most natural form, which, as you can see,
yes,
we're both sporting. And I really enjoy in both spheres that I work in. I have the privilege of working with a lot of women. I get exposed to a lot of women, and inevitably part of that process, one encounters situations where women need to be supported and lifted, and I get to do that in my day job, and I get to do that in my shall I call it night job, because often that's when all the work gets done, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So I like that you really focus on something that's key for any woman to think about living authentically, wearing their hair authentically. A lot of people would think that's just not so important or not a big thing. But what has your journey been, and for you to come to a point to think hair is so linked to who I am as a person?
Yeah, hair is such a deeply personal thing. I think especially for women of color, a lot of women struggle with their hair because it's so closely, linked to identity. And my journey, I've always had, I don't have a lot of hair right now because I keep cutting it.
Yeah.
But I've always had a lot of hair, and really unmanageable hair. And so as a young girl growing up, I often endured, a lot of pain, physical pain, literally having to, where, whether it is your mom or your aunt or somebody just trying to beat your hair into submission. And then also
Yes.
just,
Tame
you
it.
know, that whole thing, like, tame it, it needs to behave. Um, and that was a whole challenge on its own. But I think, as I was growing up, um, people also use hair to fit in. And even, in this day and age where we're in, where there are so many women who are really embracing their natural hair, even within that space, you're now finding, there are people now that are defining hair by hair types, and, this type is good and that type is not that good. But for me, in my early teens, I would say I really struggled. Because it wasn't straight enough. It wouldn't do
Yeah.
what it was supposed to do because all my friends, had sleek hair. And it's something as ridiculous as going to a party. A pool party was just like, nope, that's not happening. I cannot go to a pool party because my hair is not going to behave. Um, and there was this really, and I think this is also a lot to do with our history,
Yes.
and what we get told on a daily basis, as a young person growing up, what is okay, what's not okay, what's not good enough. There's so many things that get packed on you. um, and definitely in my teenage years, I would say, like, my hair was like my hair and my teeth. Those
Oh,
are
your hair
basically
and
the
your
two
teeth.
things.
The beautiful smile.
Those were the two things I just wanted to change so badly. I didn't like my hair. I didn't like how I looked. I didn't like the fact that I had very big teeth and I was like the skinny little girl. So a lot of insecurities. Only I think when I was in my 20s, I started broadening my circle of the people that I was exposing myself to. Moving around in different circles. And I started hearing how people like my hair. And,
Yes.
this very same hair that I've been trying to hide my entire life, I was getting so many compliments about my hair. And I then started to look and say, oh, actually, this really is beautiful hair. Other people are paying a lot of money, to get all of
To
these
curl it.
curls and
Yes.
and basically that's kind of like where my journey started. I think, I was quite a rebellious, late into my teens and my early 20s. I was very rebellious. So I started, just like doing all sorts of things to get attention. And of course, my hair was going to be one of those areas, right?
Yes.
That I completely just started testing on. It was like my little lab, and then of course it all broke off. And that was pretty much where I think I really had to look within, because now I didn't have any hair to experiment with, and I had to start from scratch. And you just had you.
Yeah.
um, and that was a really powerful moment and experience for me, because there was nothing left. It was just me, and I had
And
to
your
look
hair.
at myself
Wow.
and, you know see that you are still beautiful, you're still you. And even if your hair is gone, it doesn't change who you are as an individual.
Yeah. Oh, wow. There's just so many amazing metaphors that you have shared, that all these things that have been important in the past and suddenly they're taken away, and what you have is your authentic self.
Yeah.
Just to move
And
across to the work. Yeah.
sorry, I just wanted to make one comment on that, Elona, because obviously when I moved into the space of the natural hair business, I by then I was really, a self-assured woman, and, I didn't really care what people thought about my hair, by then. But when I had my youngest son, so I have two sons, 11 and 5, so Storm and Phoenix. And, Storm was born with beautiful curly hair. And in a colored home, that's a big thing. Like, it's a big thing. Your kid needs to have like sleek hair to fit in.
Oh, not
And so
curly hair.
not curly, but at least he was okay because he had sleek curly hair. So he kind of like ticked that box. And then along came Phoenix, and Phoenix just had this massive afro, and like it just confused everybody. And then, even as a very young boy, he started experiencing, the same challenges that I had as a young girl. And ridiculous things such as, oh, he's so cute, but it's a pity about his hair. Like, what? You're like, why are you telling a 2-year-old something like that? And so then I realized, you know what? There's really something that has to be done here. We have to get into a space where we are not defining people by their hair, and definitely not our kids. They should be told they're beautiful from the youngest age ever. And so that really kind of like encouraged me to embark on the whole natural hair business more with more stamina. And it's just been an amazing experience ever since.
I really love that because, as I was going to say, there's so much that we take from our personal lives. And when we bring it to the professional space and we haven't figured out who we are, there's just a danger of losing yourself as you grow in your career or you interact and lead other people. So I like that you share that it's important to understand who you are and what's natural to you and what's your preference in that space of being natural. So you work with a lot of women who perhaps have had similar backgrounds or different backgrounds. How does that come through in terms of encouraging women to be authentic as they grow their businesses and also as they grow in their careers?
Elona, I have had the privilege of working with some really amazing women. And some of them would certainly not consider themselves amazing. So in my, they don't even recognize that what they are doing is exceptional. In my experience, probably over the last, I would say probably the last 12 years or so, where I have, directly been working with a lot of female entrepreneurs. A lot of the challenges that they face, it's really around their own personal staff, if I can put it that way.
Yes.
I always talk about, we all have this little backpack that we carry. And often a lot of what's in that backpack is, sure, there's stuff that's been handed down. And I would say through the generations or, that has been kind of like put into your backpack. But there's also a lot of stuff that we put in that backpack. And that backpack then, can get really heavy. And often what I find with a lot of females is a lot of the stuff that's in the backpack is actually stuff that they've put there, obviously unknowingly, but that they've put there themselves. And if I can just make an example, I worked with an entrepreneur a while back who does really great work in the construction space. And one of the things that she had said was, how difficult it is to be a female entrepreneur in a male-dominated industry. And, she would put on this really tough persona because that's how you have to act in this industry, if you want to get by, if you want to be successful in that space, this is how you have to act. And, this speaks to living and breathing authenticity. And if you're not being yourself, you actually not bringing the best version of you to the table. And so a lot of the conversations with her was around actually unpacking, where and how is it that you feel you need to bring this tough persona. And in the end, what we worked through was that actually, being a woman in a male dominated space and being authentically herself was actually such a breath of fresh air.
Oh,
And this is
wow.
actually what set her apart.
Yes.
So a lot of the stuff, often I find it's our own stuff that we put on ourselves. But I think as women also, we have really high expectations of ourselves. And so
Yeah.
we tend to want to tick all those boxes. Yes, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm also being superwoman in the process, and I'm being mom, and I'm doing this. And we have, we've set the bar so high for ourselves.
Yeah.
And as if that is not enough, we then still our own worst critic. So now we're still going to go and critique ourselves so heavily that there's just no way that you can actually end up feeling really positive and good about yourself if you've already setting yourself all of these expectations and being unrealistic about them
Yeah.
in the process.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So, and I know from experience, it's really difficult to empower somebody if their narrative about themselves is not going in a development way. If they're not looking at themselves as someone with potential, then it becomes really difficult to say, hey, you could do something better. So I
Mm,
really value what you guys do in your organization, because that goes a long way to grow women
yeah.
entrepreneurs. Yeah.
I mean, I
Um,
think that obviously the starting point to learner really is about self-awareness. If you're not even aware that there's this transition or growth that has to happen, you know, as you say, it becomes really difficult to then say, okay, I can help you with X, Y, and Z. But there's a level of self-awareness that one has to reach on your own.
yeah,
um, and at least, once you've got that going for you, one starts to cultivate the soil, and you can then come and really support and capacitate and give amazing input or interventions that will help. But there is that first
definitely. Yeah.
step of awareness.
Awesome, awesome. I know we've had conversations about, success is never a destination; it's a journey of becoming that we all on. And how has that journey been for yourself in working with women that support you, and all the way up until where you're at now and leading the organization that you work in?
So, yeah, it's interesting. I think, how one starts out. You think you have an idea of where you're going and what you want. And then life has this incredible way of proving or showing to you, no, that's not actually what you're going to do.
Mhm.
So when I started out, I was started out working within the manufacturing sector, within the clothing sector. And
Mhm.
I I knew that I liked working with people, and that was about it. I
Okay.
didn't know what it was that I wanted to do in my career. I just knew that I liked working with people. I liked being around people. And so I went from the manufacturing sector. I spent quite some time in the manufacturing sector. And interestingly, majority was women that I worked with in the manufacturing
Oh,
sector.
wow.
From
Okay.
manufacturing, I went into retail. And, retail is a whole nother animal. And again, the majority of people that I worked with were women. Out of retail, I then went and I worked in the NGO space, where I think I was looking to make a difference.
Okay.
And I wasn't quite sure what that looked like, and so I thought, wait, let me try this. Let me give back. Um, but I soon realized that I didn't. You know, I think the NGO space is a fantastic space to be in. What is challenging about the sector is, the uncertainty. You never know where the next funding round is going to come from, and you never
Okay.
quite know, where, that there's this big need, and how are you even able to serve that need? And so very quickly, that weighed quite heavy on me. And I then moved into the enterprise development space, which was fantastic because now I could couple my deep need of wanting to contribute and make a difference, but actually do it in a way where I don't have to be barefoot and starving. Which is often, the case where, in the NGO sector, you constantly feel like you hand in cap, looking for that next round of funding to make a difference. And the two just came together beautifully. And all along that journey, I really, there were a lot of women that helped me understand and take small steps towards, I think, where I am today, because within each of those areas, and it's not even like a coaching program, for example, or it's not some sort of like structured mentoring that you're going through, but it's just been my experience of being exposed to women, spending time in this space where, it's a nugget or two that gets dropped. And I go like, hang on, that's interesting. I haven't seen that before. Let me try that. And without knowing, there's been a lot of women throughout that journey that have actually really contributed to my thinking. I would say even my style in how I approach, whether it is a lot of conversations or challenges that I face, has literally been little bits that I've kind of like taken, from the different women that have come across my way, and that's pretty much been my approach as well. Where if I feel that this is an area where I can make a difference, I'm not going to jump in there and say, hang on, I think you need to do X, Y, and Z. My strategy usually is a little seed. I'm just going to drop something here and see how it lands. And if it lands well, I'm gonna water that seed a little bit more, and slowly but surely you see progress or empowerment happening, but you've completely stepped back from it, because it's almost happening on its own from just a little seed that you've dropped there.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And popular belief says women don't support each other, women tear each other down. And it's so refreshing to speak to you and hear that actually you've gained value from women along the way, and also started to do the same for other women. So I have a question.
Sorry, it's always interesting because I hear that a lot, and it's just simply not been my experience, where I think if there are women that, that I have come across, that have not been nice, it's probably because there's a whole lot of other issues and their backpack, is filled with a lot of other stuff. But generally, my experience of women have been nothing but supportive, and encouraging and lifting each other up. And even, where it is required, a bit of a tough conversation and say, hang on, girl, what do you think you're doing?
Yes.
But it's been nothing but supportive. And so I yeah, I can't say that I've experienced, where you have your crown being pulled sideways by another woman. It's
No.
just hasn't been my experience at all.
Awesome. So for a woman that is looking to get mentored, what are the do's and don'ts, for the person seeking mentorship and that's going to get mentored by somebody that's probably very busy, more experienced than themselves? What do you think they need to do on their side as the person receiving mentorship?
So this is interesting because this is also part of my journey. And it's an ongoing journey. So, like you say, success is not like, it's not a destination that you reach.
Yeah,
You grow throughout your entire life. I think for me, the starting point would be to actually, one, understand that you are not going to do this all by yourself. You don't have all the answers. You probably have a lot of the answers within yourself, but you don't have all the answers and you don't have to do it by yourself.
okay. Yeah.
And understanding that, and this has been I would say, where I can speak from my own experience, understanding that you don't have to be perfect, and
Oh, yes.
reaching
Yeah.
out, whether it is for mentorship or guidance or just advice on something, it is not a weakness. It is,
Okay.
you are doing yourself the biggest favor ever. You are giving yourself a gift. Um, and I would say, think about it as an investment in yourself,
Awesome.
right?
So I just want to pick there. You said you don't have to be perfect. And there's a theme here. You've been saying it that sometimes women overload themselves with these extremely high expectations, and in the end, it becomes limiting to your growth. So I like that point, that don't be perfect and be vulnerable to ask for help from those around you. Have you had any mentors, seeing as we're now in the digital space? Is there a way to take advantage of that in empowering or getting empowered as a young woman?
I think that there's so many platforms, Elona, that as women, that is available to us and reach out to. There's so many online platforms that and if you just go onto social media, you'll find there are all sorts of really interesting webinars happening. Your own platform is the series that you've done is really fantastic.
Thank you.
But it's just a matter of, broadening and just looking out there, because there are so many organizations that their focus is literally to support women. So that would be the starting point, is literally look for organizations that support women, look for organizations that support business women. They're really great platforms online. And then actually open yourself up and be the receiver of information that's coming your way. Often we are quick to kind of judge and make assessments and then push things aside, but actually be open to any information, support, experiences that is being shared. Because I find that even though there are instances where I cannot possibly relate to information that is being shared, but I am now richer for that information, and I can then use that in an engagement that I have with another woman at a different point. And so even though I can't relate, there's so much that you can learn just in terms of
Yeah.
this online space. And from a business perspective, even more. If you just look
Yes.
online, almost every program that is being designed out there is, focused on women of color, women in rural areas. There's a lot of support that is available to women, but it's about connecting and I think broadening your circle.
Okay. Okay. I'm just going to go to the comments. T says reaching out is not a weakness. She loves that. And Kudzai says she also agrees that there's plenty of women that support and inspire other women. And that's been her experience too. I actually did a short exercise and I asked a lot of people, have you come across this pull her down syndrome? Because we read so much about it. And somebody said, if we were to ask the women in our circles, are you a woman who pulls other women down? Would you find such a woman? And it's really interesting because I haven't come across anybody who says, nope, I don't support other women. I just pull them down. So I really like that the narrative is starting to change and the experience of women in business and women in organizations is also starting to change. What would you think are those barriers that women still face today in their pursuit to growth? And I just one point, I think the points you share really apply to the women in the workplace and the women in business, because it is really about yourself as the individual.
So I'm going to say something that might be a little bit controversial.
Let's have
but
it.
I would say one of the barriers that that women face is because they consider themselves women, but because they look at themselves as women in business or women in this particular space, and that is a barrier already. You're saying, and in some contexts, yes, it's good to be different and good to define where you stand. But often my experience in business has been that you just need to be good at business and business gets easier. It's not going to be, more difficult because you're a woman. Just be good at business. Just be good at running your business and running it in the way that is still authentic, but be a good businesswoman. That's it. Just run the business. Be good. So for me, that's one of the barriers I think women place is literally, putting this label on. And maybe another barrier I would say is that there is an expectation to be treated differently.
Okay, that's interesting.
And so I think those two things may be a little bit controversial, but I often see that the two, it's kind of like hand in hand in situations, and it's, it gets tricky. And so for me, I've been I've easily been able to say, guys, do we have to say that, I'm a Black female, blah, 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 blah. Can we just say that we like a, good business owner, and be really clear about that, and show that and show up as that. And then you can add the fact that, you know what, also, I'm a woman, also, I'm Black, also, I come from this background, but just start with being good at business.
Awesome. I really like that. Sometimes our labels can be a lens of limitation. Already I think you need to consider me because I'm a woman, but perhaps consider me because I'm good at what I do. I really like that. And it ties into a lot of what our speakers have said throughout the series, that bring your great work ethic and couple that with being a woman. I also enjoy to speak to South African women as we celebrate 64 years of the Women's Month. How far do you think we've come as women in terms of taking opportunities and taking ownership of our growth? I mean, if you think about the bravery of the women that marched in that year, that must have taken a lot. And I think in 2020, there's a lot more freedom. But how do you experience women taking ownership of their journey? Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. Maybe I'll start with just like an interesting observation that my sister and I made a while back, where we had discussed kind of where we were in terms of our own careers, and if we look back 1 or 2 generations, what that looked like for our parents. And interestingly, at that time that we were kind of like reflecting on this, I think I was in Kenya and she was actually on a ship in Mozambique. She's in the Navy. And we'd both left, with our kids, with our partners at home. And the partners were taking care of the kids. And there was this realization that, wow, just literally 1 generation before this, our dad was the one going off to sea, and the woman was the one at home tending to the kids in the house. And yet now there's the 2 of us away from home, on business, and our partners were taking care of our kids. And so from that perspective, one would say, wow, there's actually been there's been a shift, and that's fantastic.
Yes.
On the other end of the spectrum, I think that there definitely is so much more freedom, and as I said, opportunities for women. So I grew up in a very difficult home where we were exposed to physical abuse, emotional abuse, and it was a very difficult space for I think for children to grow up in. But even more so for my mother, who was at the end of this abuse. And if I look back, kind of like 30 years or so, she did not have the power to make decisions really about her life. And she really struggled with that. And a lot of it was because she felt stuck in this marriage and she didn't have control, and financially she couldn't really, provide for her kids. And you end up staying in this relationship that is really toxic. And if we look 20, 30 years, later, the laws have changed. Women have so many avenues to turn to. And from that perspective, I think, a lot of progress have been made. If I look at our young people, and particularly, I'm going to focus on in underprivileged communities, I still find that those opportunities for women are not necessarily being acted upon. And for me, that's the bit that I'm missing. I'm seeing all this progress being made, and all of these opportunities that are available, but I seem to find that there's a lag in actually, just like grabbing those opportunities with both hands. And here and there, you see pockets of it happening, and some really nice, success stories popping up every now and then in the media, but there's just not enough of that happening. And particularly, I think, amongst our young women. And that is an area that I think, if we really want to move the needle, in terms of empowering our women, we're going to have to focus on that sector, so that our young women can start to come through and really, with zest, take on these opportunities that is available. There's very little that actually stands in our way right now as women.
Yes. I like that you've touched on something that is really celebrated. Supportive partners. I think the narrative has really shifted so much. Sometimes it may be a women versus men thing, but I like that you bring in that there are men that are empowering women. It's not necessarily women doing it for themselves. There may be women doing it for themselves, but roles are shifting in our families and in society. And some of those shifts enable us to live our dream and do that career that we like to do, and also guilt-free. Because I mean, I've been with you in Gauteng when your kids are with your husband, and it's all good. You're not checking your phone all the time. You're comfortable and secure that I have the support at home, and that's really, really an important dynamic that you bring through. And again, you bring that we need to start to think about the young ladies, the young women in the areas where they have not been exposed to that. It's possible for me to get this empowerment, to get this opportunity, or to grow myself in this manner. And I know you do some community work when you have time. After this long list of things you listed, you still go out there in the community and do what you can. So this is really, really inspiring. And I think, if anything, I'm going to read a comment that says, you explain this so well. I always think that the fact that I'm ethical and good at what I do should be why a person wants to use my services, not just because I'm Black or I'm female. And I think if there's anything, that's really a huge takeaway, because that can't be a differentiator. There's just more women than men in the country. So it's better to work on something more substantial, like be good at what you do. So I just want to ask, there's still, like we speak, there's still a lot of women in whose families they still don't have an example of somebody that they look at success as something distant, something they see in other spaces and not from their own neighborhood. And we've spoken throughout the weeks about us doing something as women. What would you think are the things that any ordinary person can do in their personal capacity to leave their mark in a young woman and help them to believe that there's shifts in South Africa, there's opportunities for women in South Africa?
So I think one, we can all see ourselves in somebody else, especially younger women. And that's often, when I am around younger women, I can see, there's Chantal when she was 14. Oh dear. What are you doing, young girl? And I can see in other women, whether it is that they're entering the workplace for the first time, or even just in the workplace, you can see yourself in other women, and you can immediately identify something, some of the challenges that she may be going through. And I think, what we can do is literally recognize that, but also encourage our women, whether it is young women, women in business, they just need to know that somebody sees them and somebody is there to support them. Because again, we tend to think we need to do this all by ourselves. They just need to see somebody is there. Somebody's has got their back. They can turn to them and create a safe space. So for me, that's the one thing. Like I see that I can see myself in a lot of young women that I come across. And then I think the other thing is, in terms of support where it matters. Okay. So for me, one of the things that I feel very passionate about is supporting small business in general, because I know, in fact, I know the difference that a purchase that you make from a small business, instead of, a big retailer, I know the impact that that has on a small business, on that owner's livelihood, on their children's livelihood, in that community. There's a ripple effect that happens. So for me, I love supporting small business, and I love supporting women-owned business, because I know that as a woman, she's going to turn those pennies around 10 times. And the impact of that 100 Rand, that purchase that you're making, is going to have such a far-reaching impact, that it really makes me feel that, I am contributing positively. And then maybe lastly, how we can show up for women is literally just, let's be authentic and let's role model the change that we want to see. Because we all talk about change, we all want this and we all want that for women. But are we actually role modeling it? Because that's what people want to see. They look at your behavior and they go like, okay, you're saying this, but I'm seeing that. Role model what success looks like. Because there's not enough examples of it out there. So we need women to step forward and role model the change that we want to see.
That's really touches to the core, because we often say, somebody said to me just yesterday that we're having so many conversations about women and sometimes very little action from the women themselves, so how do we balance that from this needs to be done for women to that I need to do this for other women, just to put ourselves in that role of also being a change maker, and not just, the government must do this and the workplace must do that. And so it's really an important point that you've brought, that we need to also stand up, role model that which we see as something that needs to change for women. That's really important.
And I think also, Elona, as women, this picture that is often portrayed is, the strong warrior woman that, I can do everything. And yet, often that's just simply not the case, But there's also, there's this quote by, I think it's Brené Brown, that says, you can choose courage or you can choose comfort. You can't have both.
Okay.
And not at the same time. And I think as women, in my experience, and I'm just going to speak for myself, often we are not courageous enough in certain areas. Like, we would fight 10 lions for our kids, right?
Okay, yeah.
But in business, we tend to take a back step and allow others to actually emerge or take control. And there, this thing for me is, it's always this tussle between the courage and the comfort. And we need to take more courageous steps, so that then become actions. And then those actions is basically what is role modeled. And then you start to feed off that. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. The more other people see you do it, the more they start to do it. And then you start to have this snowball effect. And, before we know it, we are going to be surrounded by not just women, but I think a race that is so in tune with the needs of others. And for me, that's an important thing. Is
I've lost you for a minute there.
No. Am I back?
Chantal?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello?
Sorry, we lost each other for a minute there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Sorry. Yeah.
So I'm not sure where you lost me, but I was saying that I think the more we start to display this courageous behavior, the more it's going to cotton on, and other people are going to see it. When you see somebody doing a good deed, you feel good, that person feels good, you want to do a good deed. It's the same.
You want to continue. Yes.
It's the same with those courageous acts, little steps every day. And that's what we need more of. For me, women just need to be a little bit more courageous, especially in business. In other areas of life, we nail that. In business, we tend to not quite be as courageous as we could be.
Okay, awesome. I've seen that as well, that women tend to undersell themselves, underprice themselves, and undervalue themselves in the business space. So I like that you brought that up. And as somebody that's exposed to both genders and how they show up and how they present themselves, you speak with authority there to say women need to almost amp up how they show up in the business side. I like that and acknowledge that they have that in them, because they can do it in other aspects of life. But when it comes to business, something seems to happen. And I know also in the workplace, some women tend to dim their lights because, I don't know, they're now in the corporate environment and suddenly I don't want to rock the boat or step on toes. Any insights for that?
Yeah, definitely. In the workspace, I see it all the time. Women often have really great ideas, but they doubt themselves, and so they don't share, or they don't contribute to something that they're probably, really good at or passionate about. But they tend to, let the more dominant voices, and sometimes, it's not just males that are taking that dominant voice, it can be another female, but they would step back a bit and dim their lights, and instead of actually taking up space at the table, kind of like hover in the background, and that can be, when you start to do that regularly, you're doing it. Others around the table can see you doing it. And that then becomes, it becomes again like a snowball. And so often what I say to women when I see, some displays of that kind of behavior: ask one question, contribute one point, like just start, put one foot in front of the other. And before you know it, you are getting into the swing of it, because it's just getting over that initial hurdle. And it is scary. Let's face it, it's scary, when you're sitting around a boardroom table, and everybody else seems more experienced than you. Everybody else seems to have it all together, and you just feel like you're trying to figure things out. But again, it's stepping away from the comfort, and actually just being courageous, and putting yourself out there. And the reality is that if you put yourself out there, you're going to get shot down, right? You're going to get
part
kicked.
of it. Yeah.
It's going to happen, so don't fool yourself. But you have to put yourself out there. Otherwise, you're just fooling yourself, thinking that you're actually part of the conversation that's happening around the boardroom table, until you actually, I think it's also Brene Brown, but until you actually step into the arena and like you in there, like really putting yourself out, and to some extent being vulnerable, you're going to make very small steps towards the career or the success that you are looking to have, if you just don't step forward and do it. Ask the question, be brave.
And I know that Chantal does this in her day job with great results, sometimes with resistance, but I love that it all comes together from how you reach women in the community to say, you know what, be yourself, the world needs your authentic self, and to your organization where just starting off with how people wear their hair, it is such a powerful shift in an individual. And here you are speaking about how you do that with your own team and also with entrepreneurs that you support. So I really want to applaud that if I haven't before in person, but I think that's a really
Thank
um,
you.
great trait. Part of why you're the guest today, because it is that which I see in action, that you go out of your way to empower women and, you know, almost show them the mirror that you're actually doing great, you know. So I just want to say thank you on that. Now to shift gears, we've got about 5 minutes, but I think if you can tell us more about how more women can join your movement and how more women can join Cape Town Naturally. I'm not sure if you guys are having a virtual event or any virtual things at the moment, but you can share your social media and other places where people can find you.
Great, thank you, Elona. So again, the great thing is both my day and my side hustle. I get to work with women all the time. So through my day job at Fatola, as a small business owner, if you're a woman, reach out. We always have programs running that is really designed to support the growth of small businesses. And so please make sure you go. You can Fatola, you can find on all social media, and you can go and get support for your business there. Like, just do that.
Yes, and they're
Then I
running a
think
mentor program, right? The mentor program that's running now.
yes. So there's a couple really great ones. I mean, some of them, have very set timelines where, you need to apply. I know we've got one coming up that's opening up on the 1st of September, and that's through the SAB Foundation. Fantastic 360-degree business support program.
Yeah.
But if you go onto Fatola's social media, you'll also see that there are other initiatives like Mentor Hotline, which is an online platform that, as an entrepreneur, you can just go on there, pose a business challenge that you may be experiencing, and an experienced mentor will actually respond with some options for you to consider as solutions. So there's a range of programs. So I would definitely say connect on Fatola's social media. On Cape Town Naturally side, our socials is Cape Town Naturally. We on Facebook, Instagram, and you can join the support group. I think we've got over 24,000 members in that support group.
Yeah, and
And
growing.
the amazing thing is that in that support group, it's just a bunch of women that want to support each other and lift each other. And so, every conversation from hair to skin, all sorts of things happen on that platform. So please do join that platform. If you just really also, there's so many beautiful, gorgeous souls, some of the most amazing people I've met through Cape Town Naturally. And some of them I haven't physically met. I've literally just met them online, but they are so inspirational, so supportive. And, something as simple as, a little inbox message that you get from somebody that you see, often likes a picture or will comment. But they're literally there for the growth and support of each other. And that's a really good space for us as women, to be in, because often we find ourselves in really like tender situations. And you just need to be in a space where you feel supported and loved. So definitely check out Cape Town Naturally as well. We don't have any events at the moment given COVID, but I would say watch the space. We're working on some really cool things. So when you get onto the platform, you'll definitely hear from us soon.
Awesome. And that is one platform I forgot to mention, the online platform. 20,000 is a huge number, enough to debunk the myth that women don't support each other. I am on that group, guys. Just join it. I'm going to put it on the comments on our Facebook page and also on the YouTube. Just join the platforms and see how you can contribute to other women's growth and also to your own. Thank you very much, Chantal. And so this concludes our series for Women's Month. I want to wish everybody a fulfilling month. I hope that all these things that we've shared have touched somebody and encouraged somebody to be themselves, understand who they are in terms of purpose and authenticity, but not leave it at that. Do something about it. Live your dream. Try out that idea that you've put aside because of your confidence. Reach out to some woman that you feel could help you, and you never know where you'll be this time next year. Thank you, Chantal.
Thank you so much, Elona.